Good afternoon. It's fantastic to welcome you. I'm Dr. Marguerite Evans-Gallia, the IMNIS Executive Director with the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering. I'm also the co-founder of Women in STEM Australia. And thank you very much for joining us this Science Week. So happy Science Week, or happy STEM Week, as I think it's becoming known over the country. As we gather for this event from different places around Australia, wherever you are, I'd like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we connect. I'm joining you today from Wurundjeri country, and I pay respects to elders past and present and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. As we share and discuss our knowledge and practices, we acknowledge the deep knowledge forever embedded in custodianship of country. Today, it's my pleasure to bring you the REDI Careers Beyond the Lab webinar series. This series aims to share with students and teachers the breadth of STEM careers available and where a STEM qualification can ultimately take you and what you can actually do once you get there. And many of those careers are beyond the lab, and they're very diverse and involve lots of things. As a scientist myself, who's transitioned from the lab into other careers, I know how exciting it is, and I know the STEM sector has a lot to offer in terms of opportunities. This event is an exciting collaboration between ATSI's STEM Career Pathways programs, the IMNIS program and STELR. You'll hear more about STELR later, but IMNIS is our industry engagement initiative, which connects PhD students and postdoctoral researchers with an influential industry leader in a one-year mentoring program. It's a really terrific opportunity to work together. Beyond the Lab is possible thanks to our major partner, MTP Connect. It is part of their REDI initiative, the Researcher Exchange and Development in Industry program. This is a really long name for a fantastic program that really enables these two sectors to connect, industry and academia. It's a $32 million initiative made possible by the Medical Research Future Fund. Beyond the Lab is new, and we are keen to see it grow in the coming years and to support you. So if you have ideas and suggestions along the way, please make a note, let your teacher know, and we'll certainly be speaking with them to learn more about how we can help you over time. Now, on to the fun part. To tell you a bit more about STELR and to lead the rest of the event, I would like to introduce my colleague, Camille Thompson. Camille has over 15 years experience as a teacher and as a savvy science communicator, and she's acting director of ATSI's STELR program. Over to you, Camille. Thanks.
Thanks, Maggie. So as Maggie's listed, I run the STELR program at the Academy of Technology. STELR is an in-curriculum, hands-on inquiry-based resource for teachers and students across the country. So we teach applied science techniques in an interactive, creative way for teachers. And we've been around for 13 years. And we're now trying to start showing students who've learned all those lovely applied skills the STEM careers of the future that they can do with all of those lovely careers. So I'm very happy that we're speaking to our four lovely panelists today about their journey from high school to a career in STEM. So I would like to introduce our four IMNIS catalysts who are speaking today. All four have been through 1 year of the IMNIS program and are currently ambassadors for the IMNIS initiative. Joining us today is Dr. Navpreet Walia, Catriona Nguyen-Robertson, Dr. Greg Bass, and Dr. Fatematuz Zohora. So today we're going to run with each of our speakers will talk a little bit about their career journeys and how they got to where they are now. After that, we'll have a short panel discussion and ask a few questions of all of them about the IMNIS program and about their journeys. And then we'll have audience Q&A. Here's a chance for you to ask anything you've wanted to ask of a scientist and especially of these four. So remember, there's a Q&A spot at the bottom of the screen. Anytime during the presentation, you can put your questions in there. And if it's great and burning, I will bring it up a bit earlier, but we'll definitely get to as many as we can in the Q&A session at the end. So to kick things off with her presentation, we have Navpreet. Nev is a senior bioprocess scientist at Thermo Fisher Scientific. She uses her skills in microbiology and bioprocessing to create better materials for the future, such as biofuels, which were made from corn. So take it away, Nev.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Navpreet. Telling a little bit about my career. So in my high school, I did medical science because coming from a South Asian background, the one thing is that there are only three careers that parents wants you to choose. That is a doctor, an engineer, or a teacher. So that's a common perspective that parents put in the mind. So that was the one thing that I chose science. And the other thing that I love doing in my high school is studying human anatomy, as you can see in the left picture, that I was always fascinated about how the human body works, the functions of the parts of different human body. And then the other curiosity is like how life evoluted on the earth, like Darwin's theory, how we all evolved. What are the basics? I don't know how many times I've read Sapiens and all these books. So these were the main curiosities that were in the mind. And then I started studying science, and then other pathway for me was to become a doctor, but I was like very scared of seeing blood. I I had a phobia that I like just can't see blood. And then my brother told me that you have to dissect the animals and all those things. And then so I thought, okay, no, I can't do that. But then I started looking for the different things because of my curiosity. I got into more and more research, science, and that was the early high school things. The next slide, please. Yes, that's B. That's my PhD days. So because I was always curious in knowing more, so I chose research after my high school. So I did bachelor's in biotechnology, and after that master's in biotechnology. It was my master's when I got a really very interesting project of making a biofuel from corn. And then I didn't knew before that we can do such things of making a biofuel or different kind of useful things from just plants, right? And it was a waste for lots of things, and then we can utilize the waste to make something very useful. And then this curiosity made me interested in knowing more. I did the biofuel production in my master's, and then my curiosity was like what other things we can make out of it from using maybe the same raw material, maybe the corn, or maybe how we can utilize the waste. So I got a very interesting project in my PhD to make a medicine out of algae, like no one think of it because it's a waste. And then I got involved in University of Technology Sydney with Peter Ralph group to make medicine, which was like anti-cancer and antiviral drug from algae. And we were successful in making it because at the end the molecule showed anti-cancer and antiviral properties. So I was happy because first thing is making it out of waste makes it affordable for the people, which is why we do science, so that it is beneficial for the society, so that people can make use out of it. So that was my research. And after that I did research in the university level. Then was my transition from academia to industry, because I wanted to see how things work in the commercial scale, how we can transfer the technology from the lab to the commercial scale to make it to the market, and then explore and get more exposure how things work in the commercial scale. Next slide, please. So then, because of all these reasons, I started looking for the research or science jobs in industry where I can get the where I get the chance to explore how things work at commercial scale, or how is it's possible to bring the technology to market to make it useful for the people, what we do in the lab at a small scale. And then because of this, I joined Imnes because I know I have the talent. I know I can prove myself, but for this you have to get in touch with the right people at the right time so that you can show them how you can make the things work, how capable you are. So I joined Imnes, and then I went to all the Imnes events, networking, and through networking I met different people who were the peers in what they do in science industry, and then they gave me the chance, and then this is where I am today, like working in Thermo Fisher Scientific as a senior bioprocess scientist. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Nav. That was great. Love it. From medicine to biofuels. So our next speaker is Catriona. She studies immune responses to antibiotics, drugs, and skincare products at the University of Melbourne. Catriona is also known as the singing scientist, and hopefully you might sing today, maybe not. Thanks, Catriona.
All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was struggling to unmute myself there. I only have 5 minutes, so I don't think I will get a song in, but maybe another time. So there we go. I just wanted to say that a scientist can really be multiple things. I am a scientist, and to me, that's a lot of different things. And you're hearing today from 4 of us who all do very, very different things, whether it's in the lab or beyond the lab. So for a bit of a snapshot of what I do on a day-to-day basis, I am a researcher. I work in a lab and I perform experiments, and I ask questions and use experiments to try and answer them. But as well as doing things in the lab, I also sort of broaden what I do in that I am a singing scientist, as was mentioned in the introduction. So I love singing songs about science as another way of education or another way of getting important scientific messages across. I'm a teacher and a mentor. I teach at the University of Melbourne. I teach other scientists how to share their work, because it's all very well for all of us to sort of be shut up and doing what we're doing in a lab, but if we can't communicate that, if we can't share it with people, what's the point, right? So I teach people how to talk about their research, but I also teach from grades 5 to 12, doing hands-on experiments and things, and that's super fun. And I'm a science show presenter. I present about my own work, and I also work at Science Works, which you may or may not have gone to. I love it, super fun place. But I present different shows there as well. So really, even just within my own career and what I do, like I'm doing many, many different things as a scientist, and so can you. And some things really never change. I enjoyed science in high school, but it wasn't my favorite subject, to be honest. And I wanted to, be upfront with that, because I now have a career in science, but I came from somewhere or a place where it wasn't, my love in high school, particularly with biology. I had a teacher who would just sort of slump in her chair and say, girls, you can read your textbooks now, and wouldn't teach us. So biology wasn't my favorite subject, and now it's my life. So you can definitely change your mind, and you can definitely explore new things even after high school. But I did study science, and I was also, like now, doing all these different things. So I was a Harry Potter nerd, that doesn't change, and doing music, sports, I was very heavily involved in like the Japanese exchange and social club and more music. So I loved all these different things, and now I can bring them all together, which is absolutely amazing. So you don't have to pick one thing in your career. I loved doing everything in high school, and I still love doing everything now. Like Nav, I come from a Southeast Asian background, and so it was expected that I would be a doctor. It was expected that I would do a Doctor of Medicine. And even from a young age, I looked up to my dad, who's a doctor, and I'm like, yep, okay, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. But I did a general science degree first, just to sort of get my feet in university, and that changed everything. So I stepped into a lab. So in my undergraduate degree, I did the Research Opportunities Program, which essentially just means I got to be in a lab, and I got to listen to the radio. I was doing experiments. It was all hands-on. I could sing while I worked, and I loved it. And so I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do a Doctor of Medicine anymore. This is fun. So I did honours and a PhD. I did honours, which is a 1-year research stint, and I couldn't imagine not coming into the lab every day. So I continued on to do a PhD. And so being immersed in the lab was my new passion, I guess. And what I study is the immune system. I study how we fight off these guys, these viruses and bacteria. And I'm really interested in, how our bodies are able to fight off infectious diseases. So I was studying a particular type of immune cell. I think of them as hipster immune cells because not many people study them. They're, the technical name is unconventional. So I'm a little bit off the mainstream. I study these hipster immune cells, and one question in my PhD just changed everything. So this isn't the actual allergy, but in my PhD, I had an allergic reaction to sunscreen, and a normal person just would have never touched that sunscreen again. But I'm a scientist. I'm curious about things. I love asking questions. And so I asked the question, what caused it? And from that, I started looking into the different ingredients in the sunscreen and found that there was a particular oil in that sunscreen that I had never used before on my skin. Because, I'd had like 22 years of using sunscreen up to that point. But this one was one I hadn't used. So I whacked it into an experiment, and it activated those hipster immune cells. So those hipster immune cells were responding to that oil. And so I thought, this opened up a whole new project for me, looking at immune cells responding to different oils in skincare products and fragrances and drugs that cause allergy. So keep asking questions. You never know where questions are going to lead. And I think particularly as a young budding scientist, you often have like such great imaginations mixed with curiosity to have the best questions. So my journey turned from a Bachelor of Science to honours and PhD. I get to work in the lab heaps, which is really, really fun. But I also get to teach, and I love integrating different sciences together. So that's me with a robot, because I was teaching students how to code the robots, so learning coding, but in the context of biomedicine. So how can we code robots to interact with patients in quarantine and deliver drugs? And I also sing about science a lot, and that's sort of what I do in a nutshell. And I share a lot of what I do with people, particularly on social media now as well. And that's really fun. So my 3 sort of main messages are reach out and just grab everything that comes your way. That's what I did. And that's how you find out what you love, by trying things. Ask all the questions. If a question pops into your head, act on it, ask it, and find your people. So now we're talking about networking. That can be a bit of a scary word. What is that? You have your friends and other students, you have your teachers. Make connections and find the people who support you in what you do. And that's it from me.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Catriona. So our third speaker is Dr. Greg Bass. Greg is a senior scientist at CSL, and he develops software that uses machine learning and AI to understand processes within cells and tissues. So take it away, Greg.
Thanks. And thanks for that, Catriona. That's an amazing presentation. It'll be really hard to follow it, but I'll try. So hi everyone, my name is Greg, and as you might be able to tell from my accent, I grew up in the smallish town of Charlottesville, Virginia, in the United States. All through my school years, I really loved math. I particularly loved the problem-solving aspect, finding patterns, and then also communicating to teachers or to friends how I got to my results. By year 12, I had taken all the available math classes that were offered at my high school, including calculus, and sort of ran out of math classes to take. I also loved my biology, physics, and anatomy and physiology classes, so I took as many of those too as I could. But American universities want kids who are well-rounded, so it's a good thing that I had other interests as well. I played French horn from year 6 through year 12, though I have to say I was never very good at it. My family would often say that it sounded like a dying moose. But I took that in stride. And really having music along with the sort of STEM subjects helped break up an otherwise heavy academic day. I often spent the lunch period with my friends in the band room or in the school quad. And I played American football for 2 years, as well as wrestling for 3 years. Again, I wasn't very good at those, but they were fun. And, I got really to interact with a whole bunch of kids from a wide range of backgrounds, which prepared me for doing something similar, I think, in my career now. You might have seen some of the sort of stereotypical cliques in high school from American movies and TV shows, sort of like the jocks, the smart kids, the band geeks, and I was somehow in all of those. Next slide, please. So after finishing high school, I attended the University of Virginia, majoring in biomedical engineering, which combined those interests that I had in math, biology, and engineering. Like the two speakers before, even though I don't come from a Southeast Asian background, I had planned to go into medicine after completing my bachelor degree, but I discovered through our university's fantastic hands-on subjects and that I really loved the design part of science and engineering. And I just couldn't see myself giving that up. So I switched paths and tried to become became a different kind of doctor. To do that, I decided to move halfway around the world and start my PhD in computational biology at the University of Auckland, New Zealand. But after a year or so, I ended up moving across the Tasman with my PhD supervisor to his new job at the University of Melbourne, still in the same area, doing approximately the same thing. Near the end of my PhD, I participated in the very first IMNIS mentoring program in Victoria. And through that program, I was paired with Andrew Nash at CSL. And even though it wasn't really about technical things that we didn't talk about very many technical things. We didn't talk about CVs. We didn't really talk about any of that. But it's more like, what does it mean to be a researcher in industry? And so when by the end of that program, I had a much better idea of what industry research science looked like. And that motivated me then to do a follow-up industry internship with CSL through AMSI. And in case you don't know, CSL is Australia's largest biotech company with sites across the world and something like 25,000 employees. The internship went really well. It was a really different experience for me working from in academia, sort of being in a lab by myself, to being now suddenly integrated into a wide variety of different teams, all working towards the same goal of improving the lives of patients. So at that point, I was at a really key decision point in that career progression. I really liked working at CSL and doing industry research, but there wasn't a position anywhere in the company for the type of work that I did. So I made a bold move. While I was still doing the internship, I wrote a proposal to create a new type of job, and I pitched that to the company. And after some back and forth, it worked. I convinced them to create the position, and then I applied for it, got the interview, and was selected in the end to lead the new image analytics function in the research department at CSL. And the company thought that I did so well at that job that after 3 years, I was promoted to senior scientist late last year, which is the position that I hold now. So let's talk about what I actually do with my maths and engineering background. Next slide, please. So at CSL, my team writes computer code and develops methods for converting cell and tissue images to numbers that we can analyze to make scientific decisions. And this work is useful because it improves the outcomes for patients that rely on CSL's life-saving medicines. What the specific number is and how to interpret it depends critically on understanding the biological question and as well as the nature of the image itself and how it was acquired. The image analytics group works primarily with mouse and human samples from a lot of different cell lines and tissues, kidney, liver, lung, blood, skin, and so on. We use both conventional image analysis or signal processing techniques that you would learn about in standard university classes, as well as newer artificial intelligence algorithms. You can see some examples of things we've done on the right. We can use our algorithms to, for example, find cells in a noisy image, calculate the distance between neighboring cells in a tissue. Maybe that's a useful biomarker for disease. And we can teach the computer to see biological structures like a human does. We can also design our AI lab assistants to help us visualize and evaluate our data faster and more conveniently than going at it alone. Finally, I'm keenly aware that it takes a strong community of support to raise a scientist. So I also spend time in my job and outside my job trying to build up the professional image science communities, both within CSL globally, but more generally across Australia, around a shared passion for imaging and analytics in emerging and current scientists. So thanks for listening to my story, and now I'll pass it over to Zohora.
Thanks, Greg. I like a little bit of computer helping humans. We like that. So, as I mentioned, our last presenter today is Zohora. She is a research engineer at the Queensland University of Technology, and we're all noting how warm it must be up there at the moment. She is developing sound wave monitoring tool to detect damage to pipelines. So thanks, Zohora.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fatematuz Zohora. You can call me Zohora. I always love myself to introduce as a passionate mechanical engineer and research engineer. I'll explain why I'm very passionate about those two titles. Next slide, please. So back in my high school time, I really love maths, and that continues, and the love for maths grows eventually, and still I have that love for maths. When even I teach maths, I feel the thrill. Still, I'm very thrilled when I teach math or anything related to math. Is really excited me. And so when I was a high school kid, I was very curious, and I used to ask a lot of questions. Still I do, and sometimes I get a good answer that makes me happy, sometimes it was not. So that's one thing that stick with me. Still I'm curious. I love to ask questions to get answer. And another thing is that when I go through the problems in high school, what I did, I practice, and then review my errors, and then do the math again. And when I could solve any difficult problem without anyone's help, it was like celebrating something. And I used to celebrate that achievement. I think that's a good achievement for me. And also I had a best friend. She and I had a pact that we'll go to certain university back in my country and we'll do electrical engineering. Why? We don't know. I got inspiration from my uncle, and she got inspiration from her cousin sister. That's what we did. But unfortunately, she changed her mind and she did other honors. I stick with my decision to be an engineer. Next slide, please. I knew I wanted to be an engineer. Why? At that time I was not so clear, but I knew I wanted to be an engineer. So to be an engineer in our country, there are certain criteria we need to fulfill. I was so focused on that I have to do well in certain subjects so that I can get admission in engineering school, and I did that luckily. But I couldn't choose electrical engineer. I choose mechanical engineer. And again, that time I didn't know why I choose mechanical engineer. And but during my undergrad, I thoroughly enjoy my mechanical engineering. Now I could understand why, because mechanical engineering studies mostly designing different mechanical system. I can see them, I can measure them, I can trial and error, and I can decide what I can problem solve. So those are the things which I developed that passion back in my high school. So that's why probably I loved mechanical engineering, still I do. And then the other thing is that why I became a researcher, probably because I am curious and I love to ask questions. To me, without asking question, I don't know how to know new things, how to learn new things. So I love asking questions. Being a researcher, it's a privilege for me to get the answer by myself. I could even dig deeper and deeper and deeper on certain topics. So that's a what should I say? It's a privilege to be a researcher. Next slide, please. So before I start my PhD, I was asked, what is your strength? I didn't actually think about that. So I say that my experimental will be my strength, and that I could offer in my PhD project. And also I was thinking, okay, so I have one strength, probably I can develop another, which is computer modeling. Again, that's related to mathematical equations, which I love. So so when I started my PhD project and developing the proposal and everything, I incorporate that bit in my project. So my project becomes a combination of experimental as well as numerical modeling. And I love my PhD project a lot. So in my project, what happens that you put a sound sensor on a pipe, and then you download an app on your mobile device or laptop, whatever. And then when there is a small leak, you will get a notification that there is a leak nearby, so we can fix that very easily. What happens that usually when there is a small leak, most of the time they're unnoticed, and that makes a lot of damage as well as wastage of the resources. So in my project, I identify certain or very specific sound frequency that is related to that tiny bit of leakage. So I'm very happy and excited about my research project, and I think that my project could contribute to the world by reducing the valuable resources, which could be wasted due to the leakage. And ultimately, it could be, my project could be contribute to the greener world. Next slide, please. So that is my path. So I was initially a passionate high school kid who just knew that want to be an engineer, but why, how I knew, but why I didn't know at that time. So I just work on that. I know that I wanted to be an engineer. I work on that, but I didn't know that time. And because I was so determined, there were a couple of times happened that I was offered other position, other studies that, look, you can't get this admission in this school. However, you can do this study, but I was so determined. So I somehow got to that desired study. So from my experience to this experience, I could say that there will be a lot of challenges will come in your way, but if you determine, you can get that. And If you're curious like me, then definitely ask a lot of questions. Sometimes it's okay not to get answer. Like me, I didn't know why I wanted to be an engineer or mechanical engineer. Now I know, but at that time I didn't know. So it's okay not to get the answer at that time, but you will get eventually. So from the engineering student, when I was enjoying a lot, I was a top student at that time. And so I was thinking that, okay, it would be a fantastic idea if I could be an educator in engineering. And I realized that it's amazing feelings to share knowledge with the younger persons and future leaders. And also it's like, you learn more when you teach, and that's really amazing, being an educator. After that, I wanted to study further and in foreign country, which was a quite challenge. But again, I knew that I wanted to study in a foreign country, but why? I didn't know. And then I came here, I started master's by research. And then when I completed my master's, I realized that no, I really wanted to continue as a PhD student, because I love research. And I wanted to more, and I wanted to dig in a certain topic. So that's why I started PhD project. And after that, at the moment, I'm a research engineer, and I'm thrilled to, get answered by myself. I wanted to networking with the people. And during my PhD project, though, I realized that I was open to different opportunities. I was not good at communication, especially networking was a really scary one for me. So I involved with IMNAS, and through the IMNAS, I got a fantastic mentor, and she encouraged me to, networking and how to maintain the connection. That's another thing I struggle, still I struggle, but how to maintain the network connection that I learned from her. And I'm really looking forward to be a leader in industry and academia. And I don't know how, but I want to be. So hopefully I will go there. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Zohora. Definitely, I like that. I don't know why, I just know that I want to. That's a fantastic little piece of advice for all of us, I think. So we're going to move into a panel discussion, and we've got a few questions for each of our panelists, but don't forget, we've still got our Q&A function that you can ask questions the whole way through, and a couple of questions have already been asked, which is great. So I'm going to start off with a quick, relatively easy question, let's say, and what advice you would give your high school self. So maybe we'll start with Greg. I feel like he's got something to say to his high school self.
Yeah, totally. Well, I guess life advice, things get better, and any sort of difficulties that you had in high school, aren't permanent, and yeah, life changes. And then when you get to my age, the ripe old age of 33, it's like it just all moves so fast. Yeah, I guess more practical advice. I would have taken more computer science classes, I think, back in my day. The AI explosion hadn't happened yet, and so it seemed like this far off distant concept. And computer science was still kind of, for I don't know, a specific type of person, but that there's another stereotype from America. And so then it wasn't until a few years later in university that we took our first programming classes, and then it was not a few years after, until a few years after that it became really, really relevant to like literally every job in STEM. And so yeah, so I probably would have, tried to take those classes early to get those skill sets a bit sooner.
Yeah, just computers are definitely going to be in the future. Nav, did you have some advice that you would have given your self?
For me, I'll just say that be confident, believe in yourself, trust in yourself, because I think you're born to break those stereotypical, terrified stories that you can't do something. Just break that glass ceiling, and you can do whatever you want to do. It's just that will in you that you want to do something, so do that, because there is nothing that no one can, like, there's nothing that you can't do. And the other thing is that don't compare yourself to other person or other student, because every one of us are different. There are pros and cons of every individual. Just believe in yourself and don't compare yourself to the other people, because there is only one you in this whole world. So be confident and believe in yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Zohora, would you reassure your high school self that you definitely will do that mechanical engineering?
Yeah, well, I would actually advise another thing is to improve the communication, all sort of communication, verbal, written communication. That's the necessary, like, all aspect of whatever profession you are in, communication is the key. So, and also I've become a passionate STEM communicator, so I want to improve it. So yeah.
Those high school kids hoping to get out of the class presentations and essays.
Yeah.
You need it all. So Catriona, I'm keen to hear what you would have told yourself that didn't like science.
It's hard to go last because, everyone's already made such valid points that I would potentially have said to myself. I guess one thing is that what, kind of building on what Greg said, what you want to do might not exist yet. So that's really important to consider, because you're in high school and things in the STEM world change so quickly. I never thought that I would have jobs promoting science on social media. When I was in high school, like, maybe there was YouTube and Facebook, and that was about it. And now, I use Instagram, Twitter, like all that kind of stuff. And I was always actually quite late on jumping on the bandwagon for those things. So pounce on things when they're new, hot and exciting, and don't give anything up, because I gave up. I stopped pursuing music a little bit, and I kind of regret that when I transitioned from high school to uni. So if you love something, don't give it up.
No, definitely not. So I'll stay with you a little bit, because you did mention the music. But what else would you have done along, like, what other career paths would have been open to you that you didn't choose and you chose this one?
Well, I did mention that I was very heavily considering medicine, and I did want to become a pediatrician. I thought, it would be great if I was on play school for a couple of years, and then I became a pediatrician and worked with children, and my patients could be like, oh, my doctor was on play school. So that was certainly something that I was considering. And now I'm sort of like, oh, what if, I worked with children and wrote songs about science and did that instead. So maybe that's as close to play school as I'll come, but it's something that mixes everything that I love together.
That'd be great. So Zohora, did you have something else? I know you're very focused on the mech eng, but was there somewhere that there was a fork and you chose this and you didn't choose something else?
Well, I could be aeronautical engineer, because I was very thrilled about aircraft, planes. So I could design, okay, if I can't fly or I can drive it, I can design them. So that would be a cool career for me. Even I think it's open for me to design it. So yeah, that's a cool career path I had. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, Greg, who wrote his own job description, which I think is great. Did was there ever a point that you said, oh, I might want to do something else and not this, or someone offered you a different sort of a job?
Yeah, I think if the CSL job hadn't worked, then I probably would have been a postdoc in my supervisor's lab, like sort of in academia for a little bit. But I think ultimately I would have wanted to leave academia anyway. I probably would have tried to do industry research, maybe not in the same field. But yeah, I sort of, worked on something that I thought was going to improve society or lead more directly to an improvement in somebody's life, more long-term, sort of what, what Nav was saying before. Yeah, but then when I get overwhelmed at work, or sort of I go like, what if I were doing something else? Sometimes I sort of fantasize about running a cafe. I'm not really sure how that would work. I'm not sure I could actually deal with customers and things. But yeah, the idea of me being in an apron serving up coffee is actually something that I think I'll be able to do in my old age.
Sometimes I think we all dream about that. So just leave it. Go run a cafe. and Nav, was there something that was a choice where you took one path and not the other?
Yeah, as I said earlier, is that I was really interested in human anatomy, so I wanted to be a doctor. So that was the other thing. But at that time, I was too much scared of blood. Because I wanted to be a surgeon, and then I was scared of blood, and then I loved animals. I got to know I had to learn the animal dissections and all. So I became another doctor. So that was the other pathway that I would have gone into, but I didn't.
Oh, goodness, I'm definitely with you with the too much blood thing there. I don't need a job that does that. So in terms of you chose biofuels and things that you work with, what do you really enjoy? What drew you into that area?
The thing that I enjoy doing in research is that you do new every day. It's like you get new results, new challenges, and there is something that you learn new every day. So it's all about learning. If you think that you know everything, it's not possible for anyone. So that's my advice to the students as well, that if you think that you are learning, then you are growing. So in research, I felt that I was learning every day. I was doing something new every day, which I miss now, but I'm happy what I'm doing now as well. So that's the most important thing, that you learn and then you grow. Because if you're not learning, you think that you know everything, then there's no growing as well. So the research was challenging, it's learning, so I enjoyed. At that time it felt a little bit frustrating sometimes as well, because sometimes you don't get the results that you want, but it's fun, and then it's challenging as well. So that was good. And the other thing was, I realized that what I'm doing, what I'm making, it's gonna benefit the people. It's gonna be good for the people. That there's gonna be medicine available for them that they can afford. So that was another motivation. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's all a scientific method. and Zohora, is there something that really kind of makes you jump out of bed and do your science in the morning?
Yeah, as I told you that I was a very curious kid, and I used to ask a lot of questions. And to me, to get to know something, that I have to ask questions. So now as a researcher, I could ask a lot of questions to myself, and then I get answer by myself. So not to disturb anyone. That's another one thing. The other thing is that during my research, what I feel that it's really fun to know different things, learn different aspects of science, and I found that it's really passion. I'm now passionate about new thing learning, so that's what I enjoy, yeah, and love.
Oh, that's all of science, is those questions, isn't it? So Catriona, what is the thing that makes you most excited about your hipster cells that you
Well, with the hipster cells, and any of research, I think everyone can probably relate to this. Building on what Nav says, you will be the first person in the world to know something. Like, by answering a research question, you have the answers before anyone else. And I think that's incredible. I also went on a fossil, beyond the lab, I also went on a fossil dig and opened up a rock and found a fossil, and thought to myself, I am the first person in millions of, the only person in millions of years to have ever seen this. And so I think it's incredible with science that you're always the first. Even if you don't know the answer, you can find answers.
Yeah, it's great. Greg, I'm keen I'm really excited about your AI searching the cells for Doctor. So what kind of, what do you enjoy about it? What draws you in?
Yeah, I guess, you know, in the image space, we're given these pictures of, you know, cellular tissue phenomena, and sort of have to draw insight out of it. And so, you know, a lot of the job is figuring out how are you going to design a tool or a method or, you know, a new algorithm that, you know, answers some pressing biological or biopharmaceutical sort of question. Maybe you can help pick a patient population to treat, or you can test how you can predict how well your drug is going to work, and ultimately it leads to the development of therapies for patients. And so that's what we all sort of have in the back of our mind for any of the activities that we do in CSL. Is this problem is interesting by itself, but ultimately it's going to be moving a product towards towards a real patient who's otherwise suffering. I guess also on a more personal level, I really like the work that I do, and I like the scientific questions, but I also really like the communication aspects of my job, and working with people, talking with them about problems, helping them develop new things, and sort of co-creating. And I think if I didn't have that, my job, my sort of outlook on my job would be completely different. If I were just totally isolated, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun going to work every day and trying to get new things going.
Working with other people, I love it. So I'm going to make this our last kind of panel round question, which is, what was the best advice your IMNIS mentor gave you? We might start off with Greg, because I know that.
Yeah.
Pretty good journey.
So I think the best advice he gave me was to write a lot. It was a number of years ago, but I do remember very clearly him talking about other career scientists in CSL. Well, no names given at the time, and just sort of mentioning that a lot of people had aspirations to climb the ladder, or to manage larger groups, or what have you, but they didn't really communicate their findings very well. They didn't, they needed to keep publishing in scientific journals, which is a common misunderstanding of industry research, I think, is that we sort of keep everything close and don't want to interact with the outside world. And that's not really, for many professions, that's not really the case. So he said, keep writing, write a lot. 70% of the job is communication, and like 30% is technical. And so, make sure that you're out there and make sure that you're heard.
So Zohora, what was the best piece of advice you got?
I got a best, I think, advice, as well as my mentor showed me that how to maintain networks and how to maintain the connection, how to do the networking and maintain the connection. So I think that's because I was also keen to develop my communication. There's networking and other kind of communication. And I think that's a very valuable for me to how to maintain the connections. So yeah.
So Nav, what was your big takeaway from your mentor?
So my mentor was Professor David Irving. He's the Director of Research and Development in Australia Red Cross. And then at the time I was a very introvert person, so he made me extrovert, and the best advice he gave me is not to shy about bragging your work. Brag about your work, what you do, communicate about your work, so that people listen about what you do and what you are capable of. If you don't tell to people, they won't know that what you are capable of. So don't shy away about bragging your work, about telling what you are capable of. And then after that, I was very active on Twitter and on networking events, meeting people. That's what I do. That's what I've done. I'm interested in this and those. So that was the best piece of advice. He made me confident. Yeah.
Particularly if you're the first one to discover things. You definitely should tell everyone. So Catriona, what was your piece of advice?
My mentor encouraged me to not think about what specific job I want to do or what the title might be, but think about what I want to do in a job. So she encouraged me to write down, what shoes do I want to wear? Do I want to work indoors or outdoors? And just all these questions that I never considered. But if you think about it, you know, you could have different jobs, but the essence of what you are doing is the same. So I not only had my parents, but I wanted to do medicine. I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to help people who were sick. And I still get to do that. That was sort of part of the essence of what I wanted to do. And I still do that as a researcher. I investigate the immune system, and hopefully I can work out treatments for allergies or develop vaccines. And, you know, we've sort of switched to looking at COVID now as well. So the essence of what you want to do could be found in many, many different jobs.
That's fantastic. It's a really great thing just for the job you want to be. So I wanted to thank all of our panelists today and all of you in the audience as well who have watched us along and listened to all these fantastic stories that we've heard today. A big thank you for joining us at this STELR and IMNIS event. This series is the first time our two programs have collaborated, and I've really enjoyed hearing about our researchers and then bringing them to you in our REDI Careers Beyond the Lab series. I would also like to acknowledge and thank all of the partners for IMNIS, STELR and ATSI, the Academy of Technology. And finally, a thank you to our catalysts, Dr. Navpreet Walia, Katrina Nguyen-Robertson, Dr. Greg Bass, and Dr. Fatematuz Zohora. Sorry, my tongue's terrible. We really have valued your insights and thoughts today, and I have particularly enjoyed talking with all of you. And we hope everyone online has learnt this and learned about different STEM careers beyond the lab. So thank you.
Thanks.